Welcome back to another live broadcast. You're here with me, Nico Johnson, and our esteemed guests today for a live broadcast about something that I truly believe that you can't afford not to tune into and hear. If you're unfamiliar, I am the host of the popular Suncast podcast, where it's our job to deconstruct what's happening on the front lines of the clean energy revolution, bring you the leaders, the subject matter experts that can help you determine how you're going to build your career, your business, and lead this energy transition. Today's show we call the new power play for residential solar, the rise of N-type solar modules and why you can't afford to ignore it. Perhaps you've heard of N-type modules. If you are a regular listener to our Suncast podcast, well, you've heard 2 episodes where we talk about it. Last Tuesday with our guests today, Paul Heidesch and Lucas Mora, as well as this past Tuesday's Tactical Tuesday with another interesting Arian Larico of PVEL. We are going to link in the comments to those episodes. You can watch them over on our YouTube channel if you haven't seen those before. So keep an eye out over in the chat. Speaking of the chat, a couple of housekeeping items here. There's a chat. There are questions. Try to figure out the difference between the two. If you can submit your questions as questions, then we can flag them. If you submit them just as regular questions, we can also try to convert them to questions. But please ask your questions as a question so that we can refer back to them at the Q&A towards the end of the broadcast today. We're also going to have polls coming out. I'll give you a chance in just a moment to try that. But the polls are a chance for you to give us feedback in real time for us to know if we are headed in the right direction, who is kind of here, and what you are looking for. Also, there will be a PDF made available at the end of the broadcast, as well as I think around the midpoint of exactly the presentations that are being given, the graphics that are shown. You don't have to scribble furious notes, although I do encourage note taking so that it shows that you are engaged. Research has shown that when you're writing, it connects with your heart, and when you're typing, it connects with your head. So you figure out where you need to be connected today, but I encourage you to take notes, ask questions, stay engaged. Let's get started here. Speaking of engagement, can you tell us where you're coming from? So let's make sure that chat is working. In the chat, just say, hey, I'm coming in from Durham, North Carolina, in my case. Where are you coming in from? And the other question I have is, why did you decide to tune in? If you are tuning in live, why are you here? And I guess for extra credit, have you ever heard of the N-type solar module before? At least before last week's podcast, that is. Yes, if you've heard of it. No, if you haven't. Obviously, the purpose of being here is to learn more about it. While we are running all of these questions at you, I'm going to go ahead and show you that poll feature. So Tom, if you can roll that first poll, I'm curious, are you using, recommending, or selling N-type solar modules right now for your residential projects? If you're using them for commercial, say in the comments as well that you're actually looking at it for commercial. I think our foregone conclusion today is that it is an optimal product for residential for all the reasons that we'll cover. We have some amazing guests today, and I'm glad that you're here, stoked that you're watching us live, and I'm looking forward to seeing how you guys feel about this N-type technology. We really have some industry experts that are going to help us parse, separate the wheat from the chaff. So why is N-type all the rage? Well, most of us in the solar industry are familiar with PERC modules, passive emitter, rear contact. I mean, we're going to talk some acronyms today, so we'll get you familiar with that terminology. Those of us been around a while probably remember that PERC was introduced as an absolute game changer a few years ago, and that's the evolution of the industry. PERC definitely wasn't at Trina when I was selling for Trina Solar a decade ago. Lately, I've been seeing just a nonstop stream of articles, studies, research saying that this is the year for N-type TopCon. Probably you have too, and that's why you chose to take time out of your valuable day to be here with us. Major OEMs like Trina are expanding N-type TopCon capacities in their overall production pipeline, and a whole range of different TopCon modules are hitting the market. But how do you know how to separate the wheat from the chaff? Thought I'd invite some of our industry experts, the ones that I mentioned just a minute ago that we've had in our Tactical Tuesdays recently, to walk us through how this technology is a real power play for residential solar and why you can't afford to miss out on it. We've got three perspectives today. The customer perspective from Trina's Director of Sales and Head of Distribution, Mr. Paul Heidesch. We've got the technical aspects of how this product works from Lucas Mora, U.S. Product Manager for Trina. And then we've got our industry expert to talk about reliability, of course, Tristan Larico. He's the Vice President of Sales over at PV Evolution Labs. I'd like to go ahead and invite Mr. Lucas Mora up on stage. As I mentioned, Lucas is the product manager for the U.S. here. His primary responsibilities include defining and prioritizing product and customer requirements, identifying new opportunities for innovation and growth. Been in the industry for over a decade and brings a ton of experience to the Trina team. Good to see you, Lucas. Are you able to jump up on the stage here? There you go.
Hey, Nico. Thanks for
Awesome.
having me.
Yeah, man. Awesome to see you. Well, I introed here that TopCon is, of course, all the rage. So can you just tell me what is TopCon? It's clearly an acronym, but what does it stand for?
Absolutely, absolutely. First, I want to welcome you to the TopCon era, like you mentioned
Indeed.
earlier. We are making the switch from the perk technology to TopCon. And why should people care about it, right? So the main things is definitely is the high efficiency that the TopCon brings to the table. Also the higher power, right? Better performance. And lastly, it is the lower degradation. And to answer your question for all your geeks out there, just waiting for that, it is the TopCon is an acronym. I'm gonna have to read, man. Even myself can keep all that on my mind. So it stands for the tunnel oxide passivated contacts. And what
Tunnel
it does,
oxide
yeah,
passivated contacts. Got it. Okay.
correct. And
Yeah.
basically the main difference that is the doping process
Hmm.
between the TopCon, which is doped on um, uh, the perk technology is doped on boron, and then the TopCon is doped on the N-type phosphorus.
Right. Yeah. Fun fact that I mentioned in one of those past episodes is that the N-type module is actually the first, or cell is the first cell that was created some 50 plus years ago in Bell Labs when the photovoltaic industry as we currently know it was effectively launched all those years ago. Speaking of cells, the cell technology, cell structure changes. It seems like quarter to quarter. Trina is packaging the N-type cell a little bit differently. Can you speak a bit about the module architecture, specifically the N-type, as it might pertain to the differentiation between PERC and N-type?
Absolutely, it is. That's a great question. What we see in the last couple of years, it is the evolution, right? So a lot of people changing the cell size. It used to be only 60 cell residential modules and 72 cells CNI utility products. And then on the last 3 4 years, the standards was all over the place. People using larger wafer. And what Trina did, we one of the first ones to go to the G12, the 210 millimeter wafer, the super larger wafer. And the change that we bring into the product architecture for the residential module, the N-type TopCon, it is we use the rectangular shape. So basically, we use the same width as the M10 cell technology, and then the length of the G12, which allow us to do our third cut technology and have all the benefits of the both worlds. Let's put it this way.
Yeah. I know one of the other pieces of the architecture, in particular, in terms of how the electrons are specifically transmitted, N-type has a better temperature coefficient and a better performance than PERC. Could you speak specifically to those two?
Absolutely. So on the temperature coefficient, it is TopCon has a basic. Let's explain what is temperature coefficient for those who doesn't know. It's basically the ability of the module perform under higher temperature conditions. So the TopCon has a better way to perform under those conditions. So that's one of the main benefits that we see on the real world. It is you're gonna see a higher performance coming out of the TopCon on these areas that we see with super high temperature.
Amazing. And for those who are watching along here, and especially if you're watching along after the fact in a replay, we're showing some of the slides around how exactly these modules do perform in real world conditions. Speaking of performance, one of the things that folks really care about is not just the performance, as stated by the manufacturer, but the reliability. I'd like to go ahead and ask Tristan Arian Larico to jump on stage. I've introduced Tristan a ton of times. I mentioned before, he's the vice president of sales and marketing at PV Evolution Labs, where he has climbed in the ranks over the last years. He's an accomplished technical director in the solar industry with a proven record of providing that technical expertise. And he and his team at PVEL often provide the backstop, as it were, the data, the science behind the reliability testing, and in most cases, in the form of this reliability scorecard that we talked previous about this week. Hey, Tristan, good to see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. Happy to be here.
Yeah, man. So I'd love to hear from your perspective. Lucas briefly mentioned how TopCon is different from PERC, but could you talk about, from your perspective in a reliability scenario, how do TopCon modules compare to PERC, which is the standard that most residential installers are using today?
Yeah, so across a lot of our testing, we see that at the start when modules are introduced, we saw this years ago with PERC, there's a wide range of performance. Some companies do it well, some companies have a few things to learn, and then over time that narrows and it becomes an established technology. We still sometimes see outliers, but for the most part, everyone's doing it well. We saw that with half cut, we saw it with PERC, we saw it with multi-bus bar. TopCon is now within that transition. I would say for the modules we've tested, including from Trina, it's in the later stages of that. But a couple of years ago, we did see some surprisingly poor TopCon results from a couple of manufacturers. So, but I would say generally what we're seeing from the likes of Trina would be that their TopCon modules are just as reliable as their PERC modules, and it's become an established technology in that regard. I'll have a bit more to say on that later, but generally speaking, you got to choose your suppliers, choose your modules correctly, but we do see that some manufacturers, including Trina, can make very reliable TopCon products.
Yeah, thank you for that, Tristan. I appreciate that perspective. Lucas, one of the things that I've been tracking is sort of who's delivering on N-type. And you guys recently had your first container shipped to the US. So what can you talk about specifically to this new technology and the reliability particularly?
Absolutely. So on the reliability side, we feel super strong about it. And one of the reasons it is when we test, we see better LID conditions, better LETID. And the way we reflect that is on the warranty. You guys can see right there on the screen. So basically, the warranty of N-type technology, it has a lot more flat line comparing to the PERC. So basically, the degradation is a lot less. As you can see, in 25 years, you're going to see a lot more, up to 4% more power generation comparing to the previous technology. Also, on the Trina perspective, the N-type is nothing new. We started developing back in 2018. We deployed 2 systems overseas. And you're right, we just shipped our first containers, our first residential module containers here to the US, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, my understanding as well is that you've got well over 500 megawatts deployed elsewhere around the world, in many cases ahead of peers, which is one of the reasons why. I mean, my perspective is, if we want to talk about a new technology, let's talk about folks that are deploying it in the field and who have it available here in the United States. So I think that's really important. Anything else that you would like to comment on around that, Lucas, before we bring Paul up?
I think we're ready for Paul. Let's bring Paul.
All right. Well, Tom, let's go ahead and kick up poll number 2. What feature are you most interested about the N-type module? So for those of you who are watching us live, I'd love for you to answer that poll question. While you answer this poll, I'm going to go ahead and bring up Paul Heidesch. Thanks, Lucas and Tristan. We'll see you guys back up on stage in a few minutes. Hey, Paul, good to see you again, my friend.
Hey, Nico. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. I will do a quick intro for those who maybe aren't familiar. I mentioned that you're the director of sales, head of distribution for Trina Solar, been in the industry for more than 15 years, have been in sales, biz dev, and management with a lot of experience across the supply chain, not just in modules, but in power conditioners, balance of system, and software. Have a lot of experience as well, all the way back to, I think, when you and I first met back in your EIQ days. So it's good to have someone on the stage that's got a ton of experience, not just with modules, but also, how the industry has evolved. I'd love to hear your insights from the installer or the homeowner perspective related to this introduction of N-type and its sort of replacement of PERC, as it were.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a new technology. You heard Lucas discuss it. We've been working on it for a while, but right off the bat, it helps. It's easier for installers across the board as far as getting more power on the roof, more efficiency, the ease of the install to generate the same power from a smaller footprint. This is ultimately going to save the installers a tremendous amount of balance of systems cost, installation times, ease of putting on the roof. We have some clients that are getting higher wattage with larger modules, but with an N-type, you're having that smaller footprint. So the best thing we can see in the market is just that ease of installation and putting more power on that roof in the smaller spot. So we talked about the warranty as well. Our 25-year warranty, is what really have to have on the residential side of the business. It's the standard, and it's something we have in there. And the warranty is really important for anybody. I mean, you can have a warranty that doesn't mean anything. It's just a piece of paper, right? So with Trina, we're going to back that warranty. We've been around for 25 years. That's a very important thing for the installers, the distributors, but more importantly, the homeowners, because something is always going to go down on a rooftop, whether it's the module, the inverter. You need to have someone backing up that warranty.
Yeah, we talked a lot in our Tactical Tuesday episode about the value of having a bankable partner. And, for those who perhaps didn't listen to that episode, we go into a lot more detail on selection criteria. Specifically, how do you think about picking vendors, not just your module supplier, but your racking and inverter supplier, your distribution partner? Paul's role in the value chain is to ensure that there is product available in the distribution channel. Speaking of, there are technical questions, I'm sure, that come up. What can we say to those who are here visiting us about the technological questions that come up to homeowners and end users, and how do you answer or address those questions? Can you give me some examples of some of the things that you guys are routinely hearing?
I'd for that question, Nico, I'd like to bring up our director of national sales, Adam Macaluso, up to the stage. I think he can really address this. He's got his pulse on a lot of the national accounts and what they're doing. So Adam, you want to come up on stage?
There we go. Hey, Adam.
Hello there.
Let's see, Adam's look at you guys matching black shirts, blue backgrounds. It's like you planned for this.
It's like we're at a trade show.
Headset.
You've been doing this for a long time. You get the same look eventually.
I like it. I
You
like
as well,
it.
Nico.
Adam, good to see you. So you're the national
Correct.
sales
I
account
handle
manager. Is that right?
our national accounts here for Trina US in the residential sector. I've been with Trina. Oh my goodness, it'll be about 9 years this October, believe it or not.
Yeah, I think you
Correct.
came
Yes.
in as I was leaving.
Yeah, just ships passing in the night.
We just missed each other, but indeed, as so many of us in the solar industry, I feel is the case. We all we laugh about that at RE Plus. So Adam, as you guys have been preparing to bring this effectively replacement for PERC, which is what everyone considers to be the standard, into the marketplace, what are some of the common questions? Let's call this the FAQ section. What are the frequently asked questions you're having to overcome to ensure that these folks are comfortable bringing this technology into the stable?
From Sorry, there for a moment. Are we back?
There you go. I heard you say fantastic question. So why don't we start there?
So in conversations with our distributors and homeowners, the questions range from the very most basic technical questions to the most advanced. It really depends on the homeowner and the installer and the technical expertise. But I mean, for example, we've covered a lot of them today of what is N-type, what is the difference between this? I can't tell you how many folks are still, who've been in the industry for a while, are still hung up on, poly versus monosilicon. So it ranges all over the place. So we've covered a lot of them today of what is N-type, what are the benefits of it, and then some people, depending on your market and how technical your homeowner is, will get into the electronics of it, electron capture. So it really depends on the installer and the level of technical questions they get, but it runs the gamut from top to bottom.
Sounds good. I wonder if folks are really clear, Adam, about the various, if you can get, pick and choose the way that you can buy N-type. I find even with like half cut cells, people get confused around, what options do I have with this module? Is it just like any other solar module?
Yeah. So, I mean, when you're having the first initial conversations, and we do this with our partners as well, and we first start talking about it, is that the most important things that we try to keep in mind are the basics. We go back to what are the most key things to remember about the N-type modules, and specifically how they relate to us, is that this is, while new to the US, not a new technology. As you mentioned, it's been around for a long time. And Trina specifically has been actually doing this in some of our other factories for at least 2+ years now. So we have a huge amount of experience manufacturing this module, even though it's relatively new to the US. So it's something that is reliable, is tested, but is also the latest and greatest. So it's kind of a magic combination of all of those things, which is great for homeowners and installers. That's a question we get, is how do we get, how do I know I'm getting the latest thing, but is also reliable at the same time? Which then ties into Trina's whole philosophy of, we've been around for 25 years as a solar panel manufacturer. There are not many manufacturers that can claim that. So we have a lot of manufacturing experience with these modules and the ability to back up that warranty as well. It's not just a fly-by-night operation. This company has been manufacturing modules for a long time and getting them from point A to point B. It's our bread and butter.
Yeah. So my understanding, Paul, in our previous conversations, is that the N-type, and I believe you refer to it as Vertex, correct? In your lineup.
Vertex. Well, the N-type is the Vertex S Plus. That's what you'll see in the lineup.
Perfect. So if I'm looking for it with Trina, I'm looking for the Vertex S Plus. Excuse me.
S Plus. That's correct.
Not XS. Yeah. S Plus, and it is presently only available in distribution.
Yeah, I mean, through distribution.
With the exception with the exception of folks that know Adam.
Exactly. If you know Adam, you can do back end deal with him, right? So, we're moving this all through our distribution partners right now. We have a steady supply in the United States. You mentioned earlier we started receiving them in June. We've had our first installations here in California. So they are hitting the market and they're hitting rooftops right now. So they're ready to go, and we have, quite a bit coming in, hundreds of megawatts that we're getting a lot of traction on right now. So dedicated supply throughout, several ports nationwide.
Yeah. One of the things I love about that we went into detail on in that episode is the form factor, the ability to just pack more watts on the roof. And with the tailwind of the IRA, with financing products coming out seemingly every day now, we have more homeowners looking for residential solar. Our ability to offer a product in the marketplace like N-type TopCon allows us to give homeowners the ability to offset more of their electricity, right? Our goal here is to affect climate change and the energy transition. And this technology provides more watts per square foot, which for me is one of the keys. And we did touch on in that conversation that the pricing, if you think about the overall savings is on par with what you're going to expect from a kilowatt hours delivered perspective, correct?
Correct. That ROI
Yeah.
is going to pencil out much better.
Yeah, exactly. And there's balance of system savings that we go into in detail in that conversation. If you do have questions about some of that stuff and you want us to go into detail in it here in the live broadcast, I'd be happy to take those questions in a little bit after we bring Tristan on. Paul, did you have something else to add there?
No, no, I think we've covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Benefits of rooftop installations. Yeah.
Cool. Well, one of the things that we see in the industry is this need for, as I mentioned before, sort of third-party validation that what manufacturers say is actually what we're getting delivered in the field. Tristan, why don't you go ahead and come back up? I saw in the news, and we talked about this past week, the top performer status in your module reliability scorecard that PVAL puts out each and every year. Now, for the 9th year, Trina has been listed as a top performer. Let's learn more about what that means. Can you talk a bit about the scorecard, Tristan? What it means to be a top performer? How are you eligible for it? And, why is Trina so special?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So maybe before I get into that, just a quick intro for those unaware of who PVAL is. We're a test lab based in California. We've been doing extended reliability and performance testing on PV modules for ever since Nico worked at Trina, if not longer, 10 plus years. We've tested over 500 unique bill of material combinations in our product qualification program. That's more than any other test lab in the entire world. So that's our bread and butter, so to speak. We also have some other services, some outdoor testing. We also do some data reports, etc. Also want to shout out that in 2021, we became part of the Kiwa Group, and PI Berlin is also there. And between their services and our services, we kind of cover the whole market for your due diligence on module purchases. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, our scorecard is based on our product qualification program, which is shown on screen. I'm not going to get too deep into this, but basically it's a living test program. We update it every couple of years based on new technologies, based on failure modes in the field, etc. We're looking to protect the interests of people purchasing modules, whether you're putting that on the roof of your house or in a field on a utility scale site. You're expecting these modules to perform, and we're helping you answer the question of will they perform reliably or not from a third party. Trina, they showed on a previous slide, they've got lots of internal data on their modules, but following the trust but verify mindset, we're doing the third party verification of that. And Lucas already mentioned LID, LETID as some of the tests they're doing. We do that too as part of our product qualification program. And then to get to your question, manufacturers who are listed in the scorecard as top performers, they need to be actively doing the testing. That this is the 9th edition of the scorecard, and if they did the testing for the 1st edition, it's not going to show up in the 9th edition. They need to have done the testing within the last 18 months. They can't pick and choose tests. So, Lucas can't say, oh, my LID results are great. Can you do an LID test? And I can get in the scorecard for that. You got to do the whole program in order to be considered eligible for the scorecard. And then you have to meet thresholds. So for the reliability tests, that's less than 2% degradation. You also can't have other failures in that particular test. And then for the pan testing, you need to have energy yield at the top of the top quartile of the performance on energy yield. And, I can get into how TopCon pretty much dominated the field for that performance testing.
Yeah, I'd love to see some of that as we get into sort of showing what the results look like.
Yeah, sure. So here I just am comparing, how did TopCon and HJT. We're not focused on HJT in this webinar, but that's another acronym that people are gonna get to know as PERC is eventually going to fade out, and it might fade out quicker than we previously imagined, and then really TopCon is going to take the place with some HJT, and there's going to be we're probably going to do this webinar again in a year talking about why is TopCon better than HJT, and we've now settled on PERC is getting replaced, but these wars of VHS versus Betamax are here to stay in the solar industry. As soon as you think they're done, they're going to come back. But in any case, we see, as I mentioned, strong results from TopCon in the 2023 scorecard test population. It's showing on the screen some of the various tests. Our thermal cycling test, we saw PERC and TopCon had very strong results. HJT had a little opportunity for improvement for some of the manufacturers there, so that's a leg up for TopCon. Degradation in damp heat and mechanical stress and even PID were pretty lumped together. There wasn't technology outliers, so that's a great news story for TopCon. In the past, if I had this slide from the 2022 scorecard findings, we would have showed outliers of TopCon modules that weren't performing to the level of PERC, but we're seeing now that that is not the case, at least in what we test. I also want to point out for LID and LETID, virtually 0% degradation after those two tests for across CADTEL, TopCon, and HJT. They seem innately immune from those degradation modes. And then
that's amazing. So we finally found a way to have a null degradation compared with thin film, essentially.
Yeah. They really LID was an issue with the boron. That was the main problem,
right.
The main driver of LID. And I remember, go back when you were selling poly Trina modules, there was probably a 3% year one in the warranty.
Yeah.
Now we're down to 1%. And maybe we'll see that even with some aggressive manufacturers dropping even further as they get more comfortable with the technology. But yeah, it's taking a 3% haircut in the first year.
Yeah,
not great for anyone installing modules. So
yeah, the original warranty document looked like a step down and then a linear degradation. And for those who are unfamiliar listening or watching, LID means light-induced degradation. It literally means what happens to the module, how does it degrade as soon as, lo and behold, it's exposed to light, the thing that it's supposed to capture. So I'm glad that we're finally able to improve the threshold of how sunlight immediately degrades the solar cells. That's a good sign. Yeah,
and maybe segueing that into how temperature affects modules. A lot of the times the sunlight is combined with high temperatures, and we saw in our pan testing, which is our performance test, that TopCon is a step up in low temperature performance versus high temperature performance versus PERC. It means TopCon's going to perform better than PERC at high temperatures. We also saw, separately from that, the bifaciality of TopCon is higher for those on the call that are also doing sites with bifacial modules. It's another clear advantage of TopCon performance.
Here's a fun fact for those who are unfamiliar and see this thing constantly and hear Tristan just say pan performance. Pan refers to the yield performance done through PV-Syst, which is the popular PV modeling software. Pan is the name of the file, literally .pan, which, fun fact, does anybody know why it's called pan?
For a panel?
No. Well, sort of, yes. But PV-Syst was created in France, and the French word for PV module, my French sucks, is panneau PV, right? So panneau is PV module or panel. Pan files are literally panel files. PAN. So for all of you who've just wondered why the heck do they call us a pan, that is why, because we've adopted, like so many other things, the French version or the French word for it. But it was named that by PVSys. Just thought that was a little fun fact to throw in there.
Wealth of knowledge, Nico.
I try. I have to make it up. I have to make up for the deficiencies in other categories, I suppose.
How long were you holding on to that one, Nico?
Years, Paul. I was waiting. I was like, please let me have an opportunity in a live broadcast to say that.
Well, I think that's a good segue to going a little deeper on pan files. So we do this testing. We're able to generate the temperature coefficients, the bifaciality, the low light performance. This is just 2 pan files from a manufacturer. It wasn't Trina, full disclosure, but we expect similar performance from their pan files. But basically, this is their PERC module pan files versus their TopCon modules 18 months later. And, long story short, based on the better temperature coefficients, low light performance, and bifaciality, in our simulations, these modules perform 2.3% higher in our Las Vegas simulation and 1.1% higher for Boston. And, you might think, oh, those are small numbers, but I've seen independent engineers like strangle each other over 0.1% in financial models. So, this is really a step function change in module performance, and we're able to substantiate it with PVAL's testing. We see that in the data that TopCon is outperforming PERC. And, this goes into the note earlier about your ROI and your LCOE and energy yield. You're not necessarily going to see these numbers in the nameplate rating of the module. Yes, the nameplate rating has higher efficiency, but then the temperature coefficients are better. The low light performance, at least in this case, was better. And other aspects like the LID is better. So it all means more energy yield, which is great for the industry.
At the end of the day, that's what we're looking for. So Tristan, what does it take to stand out as a top performer in the scorecard this year? I'd love to hear your key takeaways, and I'd love for you to show folks as you do so how they can peruse the scorecard. And after we get through that, we'll jump into some Q&A for folks and bring everybody back up on stage. So walk us through a little bit of how the top performer aspects work.
Well, I created this fancy GIF that I'm hoping is working here. So this is the scorecard. You can click on top performers at the top, see the different manufacturers. We're filtering on Trina here. Type in their name or go down, and then you can see all of their models that were top performers in this scorecard. You can scroll to the side and see some metadata, which ones were TopCon. They still have some PERC there, the power class, the design, etc. So, I think one way that Trina stands out is A, having multiple models listed in the scorecard, and B, they've been doing this ever since Adam joined Trina. I don't know what was wrong with you when you were there, Nico, but basically until we've been producing scorecards, Trina's been in it since 2014. They're a top performer every year, and I think that's how Trina sets themselves apart in the scorecard. You can see them
to be
listed,
clear at the time we were competing as the #1 result for the Silicon Valley Toxics Coalition, just to show like how times have changed. We no longer have to argue about who's got more toxins in their product. We can now talk about who has a consistently reliable product. Kudos to PVAL for carrying on a decade tradition here, though. I love the way that your module. I mentioned this in our interview, that the way that this website is set up is really smart. Kudos to the PVAL team. It really highlights at remarkable detail how each of the top performers ranks or sort of scores, not really ranks, but how they scores. And I think another key point that needs to be pointed out, because everybody I talk to when they first see the scorecard thinks, it's ranked best to worst, right? To Trina's credit, they've been in for 9 years and they always show up at the top of the list. But it is alphabetical, and it shows based on the number of years that the manufacturers have been performing or reporting in the scorecard. Tristan, anything? Yeah. Any other takeaways that you'd like to share before we bring everyone else back on stage?
No, I guess just my last slide here real quick is the scorecard URL, scorecard.pval.com. It has been optimized for mobile use too. So if you want to click that QR code with your camera, check it out. You know, we're quite proud of the results that Trina has accomplished, and you know, we look forward to our continued partnership. Just another throwback here. I'm so glad that Trina is spending their money on PVAL testing rather than F1 teams or Patrick Dempsey sponsorships, which goes back to when Nico was there. And that was before my time working with Trina. Sadly, I never got to meet Mick Dreamy at SPI, but
it was, nor at Laguna Seca, as I did. I got to hang out at Laguna Seca and at the Austin inaugural F1 race. So I don't regret that we did spend that money, but if I were in Melissa's shoes today, I wouldn't. That's all I'll say. Well, for that wonderful segue, let's bring up the rest of the folks from Trina. Lucas and Adam, can you jump up on stage? We have a handful of questions. I'm going to go to Michael's question first as we get started here, because I think it's a fantastic one to jump into. And thank you all for joining us live, by the way. I just want to say thanks to Adam as well for being game to jump in. I know that he regularly does join, but he was joining as a viewer just in case, sort of a backup. Paul calling an audible there to answer some questions is a fun way to integrate more of the Trina team. I wanted to point out this question here by Michael. Michael's listening from Jackson, Tennessee, not far from my home in North Carolina, and is wondering if N-Type has been around for such a long time and performs so much better. Why is it only now coming to the U.S.?
I'd be happy to chime in on that, Nico.
Yeah, go for it.
I've gotten this question from my distribution partners and customers quite a bit, so it's one I'm familiar with. The U.S. market supply chain is set up differently than the rest of the world. As we all know, for those of us who have been around here, you know, there have been various tariff challenges and importation challenges all the way back since 2012, 2014. So in complying with all of the rules and regulations and things, Trina's and most of the major supply chain is run different in different parts of the world. So because of that, it takes time to upgrade facilities, change things around, redo supply chains. As you can imagine, for large companies and any major company of any type, it takes a lot of time, capital, and most importantly, time to redo your supply chains, especially when you are bringing on a new, pretty major shift in manufacturing, like from P-type to N-type. It's not a quick change. Entire factories and lines have to be redone. So because Trina US's, and I imagine there's a few others out there as well, that have their supply chains run differently to the US than other parts of the world, that's why it took longer to get to the US, is mostly because the US supply is different than the rest of the world. So it takes a little bit extra to get here. But like I said, flip side of that is that we have lots of experience manufacturing that before it gets here. So
yeah, the U.S. doesn't have to be guinea pigs on the product, which is a great thing for discerning homeowners here. And you know, candidly, I find that we do tend to be 6, 8, sometimes 12 months behind Europe and Asia for technology adoption. I mean, we're certainly that way for virtual power plants right now, a couple of years behind Germany and a few other countries on VPPs, but it's now sort of all the rage. Everybody's talking about it. You know, one of the things that I think is probably important, we have this poll to ask as well. We're talking about the role of OEM and how OEM providers, you know, as Paul mentioned earlier, need to achieve certain sort of status or reliability. But everyone, as you know, Adam, looks for something different in a supplier. So we have a poll here that simply asks, what do you as an attendee look for in your module OEM? Is it bankability, warranties, power output, long-term support, price? Let us know in the poll. We'd love to get a sense of how you feel about that. If you're watching this live, if you're watching as a replay, of course, you can also fill out that poll if you're watching as an on-demand viewer. So thanks for taking the time to do that. We're going to jump into some of our rapid fire questions. So we talked about transitioning from P-type or PERC to N-type. I'm wondering, what are the key differences that you see for residential modules transitioning in going from P-type to N-type? Is there anything that installers or distributors need to think about specifically to how they integrate this product to their product offering? And these are going to be just general questions to the group. So Lucas, Adam, Paul, you guys feel free to jump in.
Yeah, why don't you get that one, Lucas?
Sorry, Nico, I missed you. Can you ask me?
Yeah, the question is, are there any differences? I think there are probably at least a couple that you see for residential modules as we transition from P-type to N-type that installers want to consider. What's it going to impact? How's it going to impact or change their order process or the balance of system? Like, is there anything specific? I feel like I get this question when I'm just talking to my friends who are installers, and I'm asking them, "Are you moving to any new module type?" And their main concern is, I don't want to change anything about the rest of my the way we engineer systems.
On the you mentioned before, so the power density of the N-type went up. So what we're gonna see it's the ability of installers to use less modules on the roof. And also, not only that, they can actually start using the better part of the roof, right? Like say they have partially shade roofs, they can, get away from chimneys, pipes, anything that might shade their modules. So they utilizing less modules will help them on the overall system size. And the second thing it is on the BOS saving, right? So with less modules, they're going to be using less MLPs, ultimately increasing the return on investment there, ROI.
Fantastic. The other is bifaciality. I feel like one of the questions that I had is, it seems like all utility scale is going bifacial. What about your current product lineup? How much of, if any, of the N-type is bifacial? How does that stack up? What should installers know about
Great
bifaciality?
question. All of our N-type modules are bifacial. And the reason for that is just for keep the standard, right? So like we streamline the production, it will help reduce costs. We don't expect any power gain coming from bifacial modules on residential rooftops. We understand those modules are, pretty much installed right against the roof. So it's pretty hard to harvest any power from the backside of the module. We are aware of that. But it's nothing to installers worry about as far as in some instances that they might see some power gain on ground mounts, residential ground mounts, or tilted system on flat roofs. The power gain that they're going to see, they're not going to exceed any MLPE voltage or amperage. It's going to be right on the bay. If anything, they're just going to see their systems waking up, let's put it this way, waking up earlier, or the earlier hours, comparing to the monofacial, the regular modules. And bifacial is something that we've been producing for a while now, and we saw on the utility side it took a minute for developers got used to it, and now it's it's adopted, and they see the full benefit of bifaciality. So we don't expect that to be the case here on the residential side.
Yeah, I think one of the things there's a question from Michael, and I wrote in the chat, if you could clarify, you asked discuss battery storage and switchover equipment. I'm not really sure what exactly you mean there, but I know that the N-type has, or I think it has a higher open circuit voltage. You mentioned just now the compatibility. Are there compatibility concerns broadly for N-type modules with MLPE and other inverter types? Is that Is that something that people are concerned about, Lucas or Adam? Do you hear that
The
in
Trina
the
said
supply chain?
as part of product management, we have quarterly calls with our MLP partners, and we make sure that our roadmap align.
Mhm.
Also, they are, always improving their equipment as well. So we always make sure that we are comparable. So anytime we launch a product, like our new product here, it's comparable to any of the major players out there. So no concerns on comparability.
Just to chime in on what Lucas said, he hit the nail on the head. That's usually one of the questions that we get pretty frequently of which MLPEs are these compatible with? And as Lucas said, we talk with the MLPE companies very, very frequently. We have a running list. We share that with folks that need it. There's depends on how far technical into the weeds you want to get on that with voltage and amperage, but the long story short that most people are looking for is what's right there on those slides is which solar edge are these compatible with and which Enphase are these compatible with. So no issues.
And let me jump in here real quick, Nico, as far as with the bifaciality and the construction we have, all our modules are bifacial, utility, commercial, and residential. But with the residential, when it first came out and we told everybody, hey, it's going to be bifacial next year, the first question they had, well, it's a bifacial module. It's heavier. It's dual glass. Dual glass only exists on our utility and commercial modules. On the residential bifacial, we're doing a black mesh backsheet, so it's a true black on black, so that weight isn't there. You mentioned, and then Lucas mentioned, the production could be there, but it's on a flat rooftop, so you're really not getting that production. It's going to operate physically as any other module. We're just taking that piece of glass off there, so that conforms nicer on the residential side.
That makes sense. Wonderful. Well, I see that we're coming up close to the top of the hour here. I'm grateful for those of you who have stuck around, almost all of you, for the duration of the hour. I want to give our guests one more opportunity to give any final thoughts, anything we might have missed. We'll go in order of what I see here on my screen. Adam to the far right, Paul to the far left. So let's go final thoughts on specifically how you see N-type revolutionizing the way that residential installers approach homeowners, improve costs, and anything that you think might viewers, not just now live, but in replays of this event, might want to know that we didn't touch on, or that you want to specifically put a pin in. Adam?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me in particular, the final closing thoughts, I have been very excited personally about this N-type for a while now, and I'm really happy to see it coming to the market, because with this module, we're kind of batting above our weight class here. I mean, the wattages that we're talking here are 410 to 420 and even higher in the not too distant future. So the amount of balance you're going to be getting from a company like Trina on efficiency and price competitiveness is really going to be unmatched, in my honest opinion. After doing this for so many years, it's a very well tested, reliable panel. Looks great. It will be displayed at RE Plus for those of you that will be there this year. You can come take a look at it, ask us questions, and it is just going to be a real game changer, I think, for the entire residential industry as far as mixing all of the great benefits of a high efficiency module at a cost competitive point from a very good, reliable, large scale manufacturer. I think it really kind of hits all the major highlights all together.
Thanks, Adam. Thank you for joining us as well, Adam. Appreciate having you on up on stage. I'd love to thank you as well, Lucas.
Absolutely. Just want to thank for the opportunity as well. And on my opening state, I said, welcome to the TopCon era. And that's it. We're here to stay. TopCon's here. Like Trina mentioned, HJT also is the N-type sister of the TopCon. Is going to be talk about it. We developed the technology. We're not quite ready to mass production yet. We have some reliability improvements to go along, and some other, and also the benefits. We don't see that distance of benefit from the TOPCon, and the price is still not aligned where it needs to be. So we're gonna be riding the TOPCon wave for a good 4 to 5 years now, and we start looking to the next
Good
big
to know.
thing. We really like the tandem technology, the perovskite. So it's something that we're looking on it. So stay tuned. Thanks, guys.
4 to 5 years from now. Thanks, Lucas. And we'll be sharing. Why don't we go ahead and share the Vertex S Plus data sheet that I know is a pride and joy of Lucas and the product marketing team. So you guys can download that if you want. We'll also have a handout available. We can go ahead and share that. That is this PowerPoint deck that you have seen us clicking through here. Tristan, I think, why don't we go ahead and show that fancy slide for you once more while you say goodbye.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I agree. We're, the TopCon era has arrived. I would applaud Trina for being one of the early adopters. One thing that, to add to a question that Adam addressed on the delay on getting TopCon into the US, for manufacturers not producing their own cells, they're still facing that delay. If you're just a module manufacturer buying cells, you cannot get TopCon cells outside of China right now in readily available quantities. So Trina's going to, ship in their TopCon resi modules by, as Paul said, hundreds of megawatts, and have probably gigawatts installed before their competitors that don't produce their own cells. So I applaud them for their model, having that cell availability, having the module availability, and we're testing it, and it looks good on our end. So it's great that people can start harvesting the benefits of this technology.
Fantastic. And if you are watching still, you can scan that QR code to go check out the scorecard from PVEL. Tristan, thank you for taking the moment to be here with us once more. It's always good to see you, my friend. We'll finish out here with Paul. While we do that, why don't we go ahead and share the guidebook, the Trina US Advantage, so that those who have not yet had a chance to click through and check that out can do so. Paul, final thoughts?
Yeah, I think we've talked about how great the TopCon technology is, and I just want to address how great the company who's providing it. So, Trina is a bankable company, and that's really a very important thing for these installers. Who are you getting your modules from? Are they going to be around? Are they going to honor the warranty? How are you going to back that? I've been in this industry longer than I'd like to admit, and I've been with companies that have gone out of business. I know what it's like to spend half my presentation talking about if my company's still going to be around. But with Trina, we've proven it. We've proven that we've been here. We're backing it. We are a leader in getting the technology out, and the product's great, but you're not going to just get it from anybody. You're going to get it from a company that's going to back it. So that's a really important thing, and you're going to hear that from installers and distributors alike. And consistency and availability is very, very important, and we're going to provide that availability and consistency with these modules.
Fantastic, Paul. And as we discussed both today and in our Tactical Tuesday episode, the Vertex S Plus module, ultra high power N-type TopCon, is now available through most of your major distributors here in the United States. I want to take a moment now and say thank you once again for those who joined us live, those who joined us watching it as a replay, or if if you're watching it some couple of years from now on one of the various websites that distribute our content. Thank you so much for giving us your time and attention. Thank you, Paul, and the Trina team, Tom and Melissa. Thanks to the Suncast team, Jeremy and Herman, so many others who've helped contribute to bringing this wonderful information to you. Thanks again to PVEL and to Tristan for joining us, and our esteemed guests from Trina for helping carry this conversation today. You really can't afford to miss the wave that is N-type TopCon. If you didn't know before, now you know. Hopefully you will integrate this into your business, and your business will thrive as a result. You can be one of the few on the block introducing this to your customers' your customers' roofs, starting right now with the Trina product. So go out and get yours. Paul, thanks for taking the time to be with us, and we'll
Thanks,
see
Nico.
you all next on our next live broadcast.